Well, SNAKE, the National Voice for Our Children, is calling for bipartisan commitment to closing the gap ahead of the federal election. The peak body, which advocates for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, says the prioritisation of early childhood education and child and family safety in Australia has never been more important. Catherine Liddle, CEO of SNAKE, joins us now from Melbourne. Good morning, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Dan. Thank you for having me.
It strikes me that your call from your media statements is quite urgent.
Oh, look, there is no doubt about it, Dan. We are facing a crisis. The number of children hitting our juvenile detention centres is higher than it's ever been, and there seems to be no end in sight to it. We see our children used as political footballs every time there's an election coming up. We know that the number of children hitting out-of-home care systems is also like a tidal wave. And what's frustrating about it is, to be perfectly honest, government has the ability to divert that tidal wave by pulling on all the levers that it actually owns already, not throwing money at this and not throwing money at that, but rather leaning into community, listening to what they're saying and going, okay, we're going to act. We are going to act on what it takes to make families strong, communities strong, and make sure everybody's safe. But that can only happen if all politicians say, look, we're going to put children first, because children should be above headlines. They should be above politics. They should be something that all leaders genuinely show what real leadership is, to step into the tough conversations, listen to what your communities are saying, and come together and go, you know what, we haven't heard much about children this election. We know we've got a problem. Let's work together and let's get better results.
And Catherine, we certainly saw a focus on children and predominantly Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in the last two elections in the Northern Territory and in Queensland, where the focus really was on what have been campaigns of the past around crime and disorder, rarely focusing on a bigger discussion about the push and pull factors. There are some that would say that this is a state and territory issue and that we're in a federal election. What do you say to that?
Oh, look, governments are like machinery, right? If you're not familiar to how that machinery works, they essentially have a framework that the states and territories can lean into. They have partnership agreements where the funding and levers sit in. They have the ability to genuinely step up and, as the federal leaders, say, you know what, we've got to work different. Now we know we've got the Closing the Gap agreement, right? The national agreement on closing the gap, which was developed in bipartisan support with every state and territory and the Commonwealth, in recognition that unless we have a moment in time where we can all work together, when we can address those underlying drivers that we know we all need, we're never going to get anywhere. Now, why is it important when we talk about children? Because if you are investing in the environments that make strong families and strong children, all those other things start to disappear. But it can't happen if every time there's an election cycle, we go for a gut reaction, a hot button reaction. Now, and I'll describe what that might feel like. If you've ever been a victim of crime, it is a visceral reaction, and that is fair enough. That just means you're human. You're in pain, you're hurting, you're saying, why does this happen to me? It is very easy then for governments to pick up on that gut reaction and say, let's lock everybody up. That is a normal reaction. But what we really need to see is more emphasis on keeping you safe in the first place. How do you do that? You invest in the programs and you invest in the services that happen before you ever need any intervention like that. We also know, and all the evidence in the world, all the evidence in Australia shows that diversion works, intervention works, prevention is the best cure.
Catherine, it's about 18 months since the failed Voice to Parliament referendum, and there have been many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people saying that since that time we've seen political parties step away from having big conversations about First Nations advancement, about the future, having difficult but important conversations. I wonder what you say to that and what you see as the opportunity in this election.
You know what? We elect leaders to lead. Step in and have the hard conversations. It might be a little bit scary to talk to your communities, but you know what? The solutions always lay in communities. They know how to look after each other. They know what it is that's causing this. Do not be afraid of this. I think, moreover, when you think about how people really feel, I think they're a little bit tired of leaders not leading. I think they're a little bit tired of leaders that just go for a headline because headlines sell newspapers and that might get more reach. I think in actual fact Australians are a little bit sick of it and would rather see leaders step up and say, you know what, this time we are going to use the power that we have, this incredible institutional power. We are going to invest in what works and we are going to listen and we're going to lead even when it's tough to do so.
Catherine Liddle, CEO of SNAIC, the national voice for our children. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Pleasure.